Long ago, right after finishing college, I immediately found a job. I worked hard and finally saved up enough money to buy a car. Since I didn't have much money and didn't have enough experience in driving, I decided to buy a used car that I wouldn't mind if it got into an accident, rather than a new one. I went to a used car dealership to make my first purchase, and as I walked in, a salesman guided me towards a rather plain-looking four-door sedan placed in a corner. Then he said,
I've been saving this car just for someone like you.
I couldn't help but chuckle. It felt too cliché. He continued with the sales pitch.
It had a minor collision, but that's it. That's why it's a bit cheaper. But trust me, at this price and features, you won't find another car like this anywhere else. Please, take a look.
The salesman enthusiastically explained about the car. It was very clean and surprisingly cheap compared to the market price. Without further hesitation, I made the purchase. One evening after working overtime, I left my workplace very late to head home. It was a deserted two-lane road with not a single car in sight. As I passed by an old bus stop with only a bus sign standing and a wooden bench to the side, I noticed something moving sluggishly up ahead. Considering it was well past 9 p.m. in the countryside, buses rarely ran at that time, especially in winter. The outside temperature was extremely cold, and the surroundings were pitch black. I couldn't help but wonder who could be sitting at a bus stop at such a late hour. As I cautiously approached the bus stop, gradually increasing my speed as everything appeared clear ahead, I suddenly had to step on the brake. I hit the brake so hard that I bumped my head against the steering wheel, remaining in that position for a few moments, trembling in fear that I might have hit someone. After a few tense moments, I cautiously raised my head and peered ahead. Upon closer inspection, I noticed an elderly woman dressed in the typical attire of old folks, a worn white blouse and a long skirt. Concerned that she might have been injured, I quickly got out of the car and approached her to check to see if she was okay. "Are you okay, ma'am?" Then the elderly woman looked at me and said she was hungry and asked me to take her home. I checked her for injuries, but she didn't seem to be hurt. However, when I looked down, I noticed she was standing barefoot on the ground. An elderly woman wandering alone barefoot late at night. It was clear she got lost, likely due to dementia. "Have you lost your way? I'll take you to the police station." She looked at me and insisted I should take her home. I didn't even know where she lived, but her insistence was so strong that I agreed to take her home. Besides, it was a freezing night, and leaving her alone wasn't an option. I also thought her family might be searching for her, so ultimately I decided to drive her home. "Turn right, turn left." At each crossroad, the old lady directed me. Although I've lived in this area for many years, this remote countryside was entirely new to me. On this pitch-dark country road with no lights in sight, I felt the need to focus solely on driving. How far have we traveled? It was too quiet in the back seat, so I decided to talk to the old lady. "It's cold outside. Why were you sitting on the bench alone? It's past 9 already. There are no buses running." Just then, the old lady leaned forward from her seat and pointed her finger toward the front, her finger almost touching the windshield. I followed the direction she indicated, and at the end of it, there was a small house. "Is that your house over there?" I saw her nodding through the rearview mirror. I parked the car in front of the house. As I turned around to say she could now get off, the old lady was gone. I didn't even hear the sound of the car door opening. I checked thoroughly under the back seat, stepped out of the car to look around, but the old lady was nowhere to be found. What's even stranger is that until I parked in front of this house, the front gate was tightly shut, but now it's wide open. Did the old lady go into this house while I wasn't looking? Only then did I become aware of the surroundings, and there was an eerie silence around this house. That's when I felt a chill on my back, as if something had possessed me. At that moment, in the distance, there was a dark, shadowy figure standing tall in front of the car. It was so odd to see a man in ceremonial attire in this remote area. He stood there for a while, staring in my direction, then began to approach, step by step. Should I run? But as if my feet were glued to the ground, my body didn't budge. As the man came a few steps closer, he asked,
"Who's there?"
"There was an elderly lady who got lost and I brought her here, but suddenly she disappeared. Did she come into this house, perhaps?"
There's no elderly woman living here?
After a short pause, the man continued.
Wait here for a moment.
With an intense expression on his face, the man vanished into the house, only to return shortly with a photo in his hand. I looked at the photo and confirmed it was her. Then he said,
Seems like my mother has come.
Confused, I asked, "But you didn't see her in the house?" He replied with something totally unexpected.
It seems she's come today for her memorial offerings, to have her annual ceremonial meal.
What does that mean? So, the old lady I gave a ride to was someone who had already passed away? How is it possible? I was shocked to learn that it had been a year since the old lady passed away, and the man was conducting an annual memorial offering. That explained his ceremonial attire. At that moment, I remembered how urgently the old lady had asked me to take her home and how hungry she was. She wanted to have the ceremonial meal before the ritual finished. But I didn't want to believe it. If what the man said was true, it meant that I was with this old lady's spirit together in my car the whole time. I felt chills all over and wanted to leave that place quickly. As I was about to say goodbye and get into the car, the man looked at my car and asked,
When did you get this car?
"It's a used car. I got it a few months ago." He hurriedly opened the car door without asking and started examining the inside. Then he exclaimed,
I used to own this car.
Then the man silently pointed to the back seat. There, barely visible, were a child's scribbled heart-shaped drawings and a name written. He said it was his daughter's name. I had no idea such graffiti existed. He continued,
Were you aware of the accident involving this vehicle?
Exactly a year ago, the man was driving with his mother, and they had a serious accident. His mother died instantly inside the vehicle, while the man barely survived but was hospitalized and couldn't attend his mother's funeral. The used car I bought was the same vehicle involved in that accident. What's even more chilling is that the bus stop where I had picked up the old lady was precisely where the accident had occurred. The man sat in front of the car, tears streaming down his face, understandably missing his mother. Could it be that the old lady's spirit was waiting at that spot, where the accident occurred, waiting to be picked up by her son? Perhaps, recognizing the vehicle her son used to drive, she appeared before me as I passed by the old bus stop?